Yes.
Yeah.
So gentlemen, they're gonna call you in a minute.
They're gonna call in. They should check their email.
Let's hope that works.
Should we all check our email? No. Okay.
I'd have to go home to do that.
You don't wanna call in.
No.
I'm trying so hard to be.
For the Zoom connections for our 4 members who are not present.
Recording in progress.
That's okay.
Recording stopped.
Oh, okay. Looks like Bob and Tom and Jonathan. Hey, Marie, I think we got everybody back.
Yes, Glenn,
Yeah.
you need to move a little bit to your right, to our right-hand pole.
He did that on purpose.
Exactly what I wanted to be.
How thin is he?
How do I get there?
Are we all set, Anne Marie?
Yep.
All right, again, welcome to the regular monthly meeting of the Lewes Planning Commission. I thank the members of the public for their indulgence while we're in executive session. I'm going to repeat a couple of things just for the record. Number one, welcoming Commissioner Sharp to his first meeting. No, we lost him. We have him. Now he's gone.
Thank you.
And we look forward to having the opportunity under better conditions to have all of us in person. And I also want to thank both Bob Heffernan and Tom Jensen, who are traveling, for making the extra effort to join us by Zoom. We appreciate your ability to do so, and we thank you for being here. And please make sure if you have comments to make, we take the opportunity to get them. And also, Mr. Panetta, our ex-officio member from the Board of Public Works, thank you for sharing your germs at home and not with us. We appreciate that. In addition to those announcements, I want to regretfully report that Commissioner Sumner Crosby, has resigned from the commission effective immediately, so he will not be with us tonight. But we do have a quorum, and we are going to proceed. And unless there are any further announcements from anybody, the first item of business is unfinished business B1, as reflected in the meeting agenda. Presentation, discussion, and possible recommendation to Mayor and City Council regarding a minor subdivision for the lands of Thomas for the creation of one new lot with the residual lot to be located off Oregon and Bay Avenue. Zoned R3, Sussex County Tax Map 335-4.15-24.00, MS-2-21. There was a packet of information attached to the agenda, both for the public and for the commissioners. It is now open for discussion and/or motion. Let's not all talk at once.
I will just note that there were a number of questions that were submitted from commission members. Those questions were answered, and made part of the report that is as part of the record.
And that's in the public domain.
Correct.
Bob Heffernan, did you have any questions that you did not get answered you were seeking?
Yes, I did. I had asked the city planner a month ago with an email to the city planner and Drew because I was confused at the last meeting about the definition of setbacks and so on. And I had asked for a couple of drawings of if the lots were subdivided and facing Bay Avenue, where would they be? I think they are more or less in the record, although they're hard to read. Then I asked the city planner for a similar set of drawings as if they were facing Oregon. And I got nothing back. There's nothing in the record that describes what the city planner thinks is the way that would be. But the applicant took exception to some of the material submitted by neighbors that was, I'll say, hand-drawn. The ones submitted by the applicant are impossible to read because I've blown them up in certain cases, looking for certain dimensions. So I was simply asking for some more information. That information does not exist in the record. And I really think it's fair to be somewhat critical. Part of the answer was the city doesn't have or ability to do a CAD/CAM drawing. I think that's somewhat specious. It's not very expensive. It's not very hard. And the CAD program I use costs $200 if you buy all the training. So I'm a little disappointed in that, and I really don't think I have enough information to understand what the city planner tried to say last time, because I didn't understand it then, and I certainly don't understand it now.
And your primary question relates to the setbacks, depending on
Yes.
which way. Janelle, do you want to try and address that?
So all of the
Before she starts, I just want to say, we do not have CAD at the city, and we don't have CAD operators. So, I mean, we need to be able to work with what we have. And if we do get CAD, I know the last time I purchased CAD, it was way more than $200. You need a CAD operator. So we don't design things, so we don't use CAD. So
GMB wouldn't have been able to provide that had you requested it?
I don't, well, one, I don't think it's really the role of the planning commission to design things. And again, every time we ask GMB for something, that's a billable expense. So I think we need to, the idea of having what the applicant has submitted redrawn is, I think, just kind of beyond the scope of what staff anywhere would do.
I asked for it to be drawn 90 degrees to understand what the city planner meant. And, I would think that at least the building official would do better by reviewing the CAD drawings and so on. If you'd like the link to where to buy it, I'd be happy to provide.
Okay, but for now, we don't have the drawing, so Janelle, can you address the setback issue verbally as best you can?
So the setbacks, after going back and reviewing everything, both of the lots on that side of Oregon Avenue are corner lots, and they actually neither face Oregon. The one in question actually faces Bay Avenue. The other one actually faces Cedar Avenue. So the setbacks, as stated in the report, from, there is no existing building line, established building line. So the setback, as shown on the submitted plan, would be 25 feet off of Bay Avenue. It would be 8 feet off of Oregon, and 15 off the opposite side of Bay Avenue would be the setbacks for the lots as proposed, and that is actually shown on the applicant's drawing.
Can I ask, I'm a little confused because I thought this question was answered at our last meeting, and I don't have all of your answers to our questions right in front of me right now. But if I understand Bob's question is, if you bisect off of Oregon instead of off of Bay, wouldn't each of those lots have a 25-foot front setback?
Yes.
8 foot on the sides and 15 feet in the back, because
Correct.
that's what the code says.
That is correct.
Okay.
So,
But could I
Yes.
just, as a fairly new member, I'd like to just clarify one thing, and that is, we have things come before us that we can approve. I mean, we could recommend approval to city council with or without conditions, or we can recommend denial. But I don't think, I'm not sure, Bob, how doing another drawing that's not what the applicant is bringing forward
Well, I
makes
frankly
sense in
was,
terms of a city employee's time, or in a sense our time, because it isn't something that we could approve or deny.
I think I was gonna suggest that a condition be that they be bisected the other way.
I see. I guess I thought that would go beyond a condition, kind of, but is,
Yeah, I think
Is
that's
that
right.
a
I think
condition or is
the
it-
applicant has made application to bisect them perpendicular to Bay, and that's either an up or down approval with or without conditions. I don't think you redesign the way the lots are oriented or not oriented.
Could it be approved and that be a condition or a suggestion that we made to the mayor and city council?
Again, I don't think it can be a condition of approval or denial. I think that you can say, we would rather that in this area of the city, that the lots be oriented this way or that way. So legislatively, mayor and city council maybe think about doing something with the zoning code that would require an orientation that's consistent with the planning commission's wishes.
So it could be a suggestion, but not a condition.
Right, correct.
All right, other questions for Janelle? Let's make sure we don't miss anybody. Tom, Jensen, do you have any questions on this application?
I do not, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Jonathan, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Did you have a chance to look at this material? Do you have any questions? You're muted, I believe, Jonathan?
No, I do not have any questions. I'm not familiar enough with it to really question it.
All right, thank you. Deborah, do you have any other questions? Joe?
I'm good.
Melanie? Nancy?
No.
Khalil?
Nope.
All right, then I need a motion, ladies and
Mr. Chair, are
gentlemen.
you taking any public comment, or are you
No,
finished? Okay, because we have hands up.
no.
Yes, I would like to make a motion to recommend that the mayor and city council approve this application with conditions.
And the conditions would be,
Would be that
and Glenn can help us on this.
some level of management for runoff be provided on each of the new lots.
I'll second that.
Because it's been
Can
made in
I-
second. Can you repeat it, the condition again, so the planner gets it down?
Yes, the condition being that some level of runoff be controlled in the approved best management practices of the city, as directed by the city engineer.
And Joe, you seconded
I
that,
did.
correct?
Yes.
All right, is there any further, Nancy, did you have
I
comments?
have some discussion on it
Please.
and other conditions that I'd like to,
As do I.
I would like the condition to be perhaps more specific in terms of asking that a soil infiltration report be done, and that infiltration practices approved by the city engineer be put in place, along with 3 stormwater BMPs. And I think we do have a list of stormwater BMPs that the applicant can review and then have these reviewed and approved by, again, by the city engineer. So that's just a suggestion
Okay, that's a condition that you're
to
modifying the condition.
to
that was-
modify this current
Is
condition.
is that a friendly amendment, Melanie, or you want to leave yours as is?
Well, I don't think that quantifying the number of BMPs really makes a difference. I think if the city engineer determines that one technique is adequate, then that's fine with
Okay.
me.
Okay.
You know, I think we need to leave that kind of decision to the expert.
And infiltration
not-
practices?
Yeah,
would-
infiltration, that's fine, that's fine.
I
Okay,
also have,
Wait 1 second, we're not done with it. Sorry, we've got to finish your amendment. Do you accept the amendment that has now been negotiated between the two?
I'll accept, yes.
All right.
So I'm just gonna verify that it's for the soil suitability for infiltration, installation of infiltration practices that would be reviewed and approved by the city engineer.
Nancy,
Okay,
yes,
yeah.
okay.
Okay, I just
So-
want to make sure.
I
I
had
have it.
Two,
Go, keep going.
I had.
You've got the floor. Go ahead.
Okay, good, okay. I also think, would like to recommend a condition that, recommend to city council that they carefully review the request from the applicant to use the paper street for access. And with particular focus on 2 aspects of that. One would be that the paper street not include any impervious materials, because I think we've had that paper street there for a long time as something that receives water, and in a sense, adding impervious materials to it, it provides the applicant with kind of extra impervious coverage above what the code envisions for a lot. And secondly, that if the paper street is to be used for access, that there not be a driveway directly from Bay, so that you then end up with kind of 2 entry points being given. Is there a second on that condition?
No.
Before
I actually wanted to add something too about the paper street usage. Can I just check what protocol is as a newer member too? Is the time to add a thought in the same vein while it's being
Yeah, that's
proposed?
fine.
Okay,
This is an
Yeah.
amendment, so if
Okay.
you're going to amend the amendment essentially.
okay. My suggestion with the paper streets, as my understanding, are they, we must reserve the use of these paper streets for emergency, and that, as a health and safety issue, I would suggest to city council also to not allow, subdivision that relies on paper streets for access.
Okay, that's going to have to be a separate standalone amendment because it's really overcoming what she did. Is there a second for Deborah's motion to reserve use of paper streets for emergency purposes only? Is there a second to that amendment to the amendment?
I'll second.
All right, Bob seconds it. All right. Are there any other, you have more amendments? Okay, let's wait though,
Okay,
because does it relate to?
I have one more amendment. I'm not clear actually whether this is a current requirement.
Okay, but wait a minute, I'm sorry. Does it relate to the paper street or otherwise, Nancy?
Not to the paper street.
Okay, I'm gonna call the question on the paper street so we don't get confused here. So the first vote would be on the amendment to the amendment to reserve use of the paper street for emergency purposes only by Deborah, seconded by Bob.
I have discussion.
Yes,
Does this mean that there should be no trees permitted in the paper streets like there is now? Should all trees be cut down?
the proffer of the motion.
I think we're opening an entire can of worms if we're talking about That's a question none of us, I think, can answer at this point.
I think it's a fair question, and I say that because I think we all know that the planting of trees is a productive way in terms of dealing with water. And given the setbacks on the sides being 8 feet, having trees that overlap or are planted even there provide a productive way of dealing with some water. So I wouldn't want to, and quite frankly, I can't actually see someone, I mean, I don't see emergency vehicles driving down those paper streets or, you know.
Have it both ways.
Yeah.
So I know you're in discussion, but just keep in mind that what's before you tonight is, you're talking about a suggestion to make to city council. What's before you is a recommendation on the subdivision. I wouldn't lose sight of the subdivision question, you know, and spend a lot of time on the access, which seems to be where you're headed a little bit.
That may be a separate recommendation, but we're gonna deal with the amendment momentarily.
Yeah.
Bob, do you have anything you want to add to the amendment?
No.
All right, I'm gonna call the question on the amendment to the amendment, and then we'll go back to the conditions on the paper street that Nancy first offered before we get to your next amendment. Okay, so because we have people on the screen, I'm gonna ask for a vote on the emergency use restriction for the paper streets. Deborah?
I vote in favor.
Joe?
No.
No.
Melanie, no.
No.
Nancy, no. Bob?
Yes.
Tom Jensen?
No.
Jonathan?
Yes?
Okay, and the chair votes no. By my count, the motion is defeated.
3 to 5.
The amendment to the amendment is defeated. Sorry?
Yeah, 3 to 5.
Right.
Yep.
I was gonna say 3 to 5. Now we're gonna go back to your first amendment that's still pending, which you're
Okay.
not gonna amend, so we're gonna now, this is the question that, the condition be no impervious material be used on the paper street, and that there is no driveway access from Bay Avenue. Is that correct?
If the paper street is to be used for access, then there be no other access.
No
from Bay
additional
Avenue-
access.
Additional access from Bay Avenue.
Okay. So I'm gonna call that question unless there's discussion. You look puzzled. You want a question?
If that's the only access, or it has to be
No,
about
no.
it would be an unpaved access.
Yes. And you have those, you have those.
You do have those.
Yeah.
Or paved with pervious material, if that's something that can be used in that area.
All right, so I'm gonna call the question. Deborah, on this amendment alone.
No.
Joe?
Yes.
Melanie?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Bob Heffernan?
Yes.
Tom Jensen?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So that makes it 7-1 by my count.
Correct.
So the amendment is approved. You have another amendment.
This is the last
That's
amendment
fine.
I have.
Take your time.
And that is the encroachment into the city's right-of-way along Bay Avenue and Oregon Avenue be removed as part of the demolition and relocation of the building.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on that motion? Anybody have a point they wish to make?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, Nancy, could you repeat it? Just you cut out for a second.
Sorry, it's that the encroachment into the city's right-of-way along Bay Avenue and also along Oregon Avenue be removed as part of the demolition and relocation of the building.
Thank you.
It's a condition of approval of the subdivision. It's not just the demolition of the building, it's a condition of approval of the subdivision.
Excuse me, you're right, correct, sorry.
Okay, I'm gonna call the question unless I hear another comment. Khalil, did you want to make a comment?
Oh, no.
I'm sorry, I want to make sure everybody gets a chance.
Of
Deborah?
course.
No.
No.
Oh, no. I did want to make a
I
comment.
want you to vote.
I approve it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
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 Bob
Yes.
Heffernan?
Yes.
Tom Jensen?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes?
The chair votes yes, that's unanimous. All right, are there other amendments to the motion to approve the subdivision?
Yes.
Deborah, go ahead.
This relates to EBL. To recognize that there is an established building line on Oregon Avenue, and to keep the footprint of any new home within the established building line on Oregon Avenue, even though the orientation is being changed.
Okay.
Can I ask a question of?
Well, let's wait and see if we have a second. Is there a second for that amendment? Joe, you have a?
I'll second.
Who, Bob, was that you?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so now
It's hard for me
it's
to-
open for discussion. Nancy, go ahead.
Sorry, it's hard for me to make a judgment on seconding without making sure I understood it. And that is, what is the established building line? Because I thought the established building line right now is 2 feet. And the setback, if this is approved, along Oregon would be 8 feet.
There's
And
been
so
some debate about
Is
that.
your intention to move it to 2 feet? Because
No.
that would have surprised me, but,
I think Janelle's answer was if the house is fronting on Bay Avenue, the Oregon setback would be 8 feet. If the house were to front on Oregon, the setback would be 25 feet.
Correct. Yeah. So there's really no established building line because they're proposing to move the house?
But the other homes along,
There is no, because they're both corner lots, there's no established building line on Oregon because there are 2 lots on this side of Oregon. This one fronts Bay, the other one fronts Cedar, so there is no established building line.
I will remove that one then.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
I'm sorry, Deborah, you said
I said I would remove that then,
withdraw your,
withdraw it.
Bob, is that acceptable to you to withdraw?
Yes.
Thank you, Bob. You had another one, Deborah?
Screening with native plants that are found on Lewes Beach should be used to screen the side of the home on Oregon Avenue. There should be a buffer with landscaping.
Is there a second to that amendment?
Clarification? Isn't it
Yes.
Parks and Rec?
All right, Tom Jensen has seconded it. So now we're open for discussion. Go ahead.
As this is a subdivision, shouldn't Parks and Recreation review that?
So this is a minor subdivision and minor subdivisions do not require review by the Parks and Rec Commission.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask Glenn because there is no landscaping requirement for minor subdivisions or even major subdivisions. So is this something that could be a condition?
Okay, the general rule has to be a reasonable condition related to a health, safety, and welfare concern, and has to be specific to a health, safety, welfare concern. So, if this is approved as a condition, we'll be listening closely in the vote for rationale as to why this condition is appropriate or not appropriate, depending on how you vote.
Should I comment further
Well, no,
on this?
we'll do the vote.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions or comments on it before we do the roll call then? Yea or nay? Tom, did you want to say something? Tom Jensen?
No,
Sorry.
no, I'm good, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, Deborah, this is your motion. We're voting whether a condition would be to require the planting of native plants for screening on the Oregon Avenue side of the line. So please render your explanation and your vote.
I vote in favor of this, yes, and I'm going to go back to our core values about community and, streetscape, keeping preserving Lewes Beach. The other thing relates back to the stormwater management, and that we know that having native plants supports stormwater management. And regardless of how this falls out, there's going to be a much larger percentage of coverage of what is now an open lot. So adding some additional landscaping to that could aid in the stormwater management and in keeping character of the neighborhood.
Tom Jensen, you seconded it. Your vote, please, and your explanation.
Vote in favor of the amendment, Mr. Chairman, and some of the reasons that Deb articulated, including the fact that in the residential beach zone, I think preserving the distinctive residential character of the zone is a very important element, frankly, and dynamic, in that I have strong stormwater management concerns about the plan as proposed. Thank you.
Joe?
I vote no. I think we're getting into micromanagement here, and it's just not necessary at all.
Melanie?
I would vote for it, yes.
And your reason?
Oh, my reason is, again, supporting the fact that plants will take up some water and that some screening along Oregon Avenue might be appropriate for the existing houses across the street.
Nancy?
I vote yes, for similar reasons to Melanie. I think that we've seen an increase in storm water in this area. I think the reorientation of the lots and the buildings presents some challenges in terms of water coming off of Oregon, and that these plants could have a positive, can be a positive factor in addressing that. And that is a health issue.
Bob Heffernan?
I would vote in favor of it, with as many naturally occurring plants as we can have, native plants. They'll last longer, they'll take less care, and they will absorb stormwater and probably improve the look of the neighborhood a little bit from what we've seen elsewhere.
Thank you. Jonathan?
I'm voting yes, largely for preservation of stormwater management.
Thank you. And the chair will vote yes for the reasons that particularly the gentlewoman from Second Street articulated, as they say in Congress. But more importantly, I think any stormwater management additions are a positive, not a negative. My only concern would be that we also don't want to isolate the property from the neighbors on Oregon Avenue by putting in a wall of such gigantic native plantings, trees or otherwise, that you isolate that side of Oregon Avenue so we don't have the neighborhood effect. But in the meantime, the motion carries 8-1 for the reasons stated. Deborah, do you have another amendment?
The only other amendment that I had is kind of contrary to the paper streets perhaps. It was that recommending that the access must be from Bay Avenue, and is there any other discussion or interest in pursuing that?
Well, is there a second to a motion to limit access to Bay Avenue on the second lot? The one off Bay, only from Bay, both of them from Bay Avenue, or just one? Which one, the corner one or the second one?
The second one, not the one.
Not the one on Oregon.
Not the one from Oregon.
All right. So the amendment, proposed amendment is to limit access from Bay Avenue to the lot that is not on Oregon Avenue, what I'm calling the second lot. And is there a second to that motion?
Yes, I'll second.
Bob Heffernan, second. All right. We're going to be dealing with the issue of how many driveways somebody can have in a few minutes, but I don't know if the pending ordinance applies, but I think this is a reasonable issue for us to address, up to mayor and city council what they do with it. All right. Are there any other discussions on this amendment? Hearing none. Deborah, your vote?
Yes.
Do we need an explanation again?
I don't think so. I think you're going to give an explanation in your final vote.
Right,
overall
well,
vote.
that's what I just want to make sure.
Thanks.
That's why you're getting the big bucks, you know, tell us what to do. Joe?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Bob, you seconded it, you should have gone next.
Yes.
All right, Joe?
No.
Yes.
Melanie, yes?
And I vote yes, because I think that we should leave the paper street.
Okay. Nancy?
I'm in my head trying to figure out if this condition is in conflict with another condition that we've already voted on. So,
Well, I might be able to help just a little bit.
Yeah,
I think the first one you voted on was more of a suggestion to city council
Yes.
that,
yes.
if you allow it, then it has to be impervious material. If you, we prefer it to be on bay. This would be an actual condition of approval, that access must be.
The other one,
Was the other one an
Yeah.
actual? I thought,
that was a condition of approval.
I thought that we couldn't make because city council alone can make a decision on the paper street. I thought mine was a recommendation.
I know I had it as a condition.
Well, yours was related to the paper street, ergo
Yes.
the driveway issue. This is a specific about whether
Yeah.
there is a driveway off Bay Avenue or not. That's a condition that's being suggested. So they're somewhat complementary and
And
not.
That's true.
I am supportive of the amendment, of the condition. However, if city council were to choose not to follow that, I'm also supportive of my recommendation that if they're going to allow the paper street to be used, that there not be an additional driveway off of Bay.
so I think it's appropriate that you could vote on this. You could vote yes on this if you so choose to go that way, and it would not be in actual conflict with your prior motion, because this one goes further and sends a message to city council that that's our preference, your preference as a planning commission. But if you should not choose that, then look at this other condition that we've also approved.
So, and that's in terms of my rationale for voting yes, I've just stated the rationale. Okay.
Thanks.
All right, so, Bob, you haven't voted, correct?
Yeah, Bob
Yes.
voted.
Bob
No,
voted.
Tom Jensen, sorry, I'm trying to remember who seconded these. Tom?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm a yes, Mr. Chairman, for the reason that we have essentially reoriented the lots, and I believe that it makes value from a public safety perspective to recommend additional driveway that has not gone on exit Bay Avenue.
All right, Jonathan, thank you, Tom. Jonathan?
Yes,
Okay, and the chair will vote yes. Now, are there any other amendments from the commissioners? Seeing none, seeing only shaking of heads, no. We have a motion to approve we have a motion to recommend to mayor and city council approval of a minor subdivision for the lands of Thomas located at Oregon and Bay Avenue, as defined earlier in our introduction of this matter. The approval has a couple of amendments that were added on to the approval. And while I'm going to try and summarize them, I'm going to ask leave of the commission to have our legal counsel make sure that we put these in the proper form as we go forward. The first amendment was that there be a soil infiltration study of the property, and the GMB, the city engineer, would review the results of that and work with the developer to determine approved runoff management practices necessary following the infiltration study. Number two, this is the more complicated one that we just talked about, where the paper street, the condition would be that there be no impervious material added to the paper street. And secondly, that the use of the paper street would obviate the necessity for a driveway off Bay Avenue. The third or fourth condition would be that all encroachment into city property on Bay Avenue, Oregon Avenue be removed as part of the approval of this particular subdivision. And the next one was the requirement condition for the screening of native plants, planting and screening of native plants on Oregon Avenue. And finally, that if there is to be a driveway, they have to be on Bay Avenue. So those are the conditions the amendments that have been approved. Again, I'm going to ask license of the commission to have council make sure we get those in the proper form as we recommend them to mayor and city council. We now have to vote. It'll be a roll call vote, as is traditional. The roll call vote requires each of us to explain the rationale for our voting. And as the custom and the rules require, the chair always has to vote last. So I'm going to start with Melanie, who made the substantive motion to approve the subdivision, and then we'll go through the rest of the commissioners. Melanie?
Yes, I'm voting yes on this motion because the subdivision is in accordance with the city code, and that I think we have added reasonable standards for them to comply with.
And for reasons you previously stated on the amendments.
Yes.
All right. Nancy?
I vote yes, and because the application is in compliance, and the conditions that we've added, I've already stated my reasons for those, but I think as a group and as individual conditions, they all contribute to improved health and safety.
Joe?
I'll vote yes. The application is within code, and I believe the two houses that will be built there will be facing the bay and will greatly enhance the neighborhood.
Deborah?
I vote yes because the application does meet the zoning code for the city of Lewes. I would like to add some additional suggestions, not conditions, for consideration for the mayor and city council. Would this be the appropriate time to do it, or after the vote?
That's fine, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry to be lengthy, but I'm going
That's
to
all
be
right, go
lengthy.
ahead.
The first is, there's no stormwater management system on Lewes Beach. And if we're not going to address this, if not now, when? Clearly, we cannot apply that to this application because it isn't in the code, but it needs to be in the code. And I would propose to mayor and city council that they strongly consider placing a moratorium on lot subdivision and new construction that exceeds the current footprints or exceeds the footprints of current homes until a stormwater management system is developed and implemented for Lewes Beach. This is a serious health and safety concern. The second thing that I would suggest to mayor and city council is that orientation of lots should align with their street address. And reorienting is not a wise practice. The third consideration is really rather out there, but I'm going to shoot it out anyway. We are not Rehoboth. We are not Bethany. We are not Fenwick. We are Lewes. And history matters here. And I would consider starting or offering historic beach cottage designations to homeowners who wish to formally protect the character of their personal beach cottages, as well as the historic character and integrity of Lewes Beach before it's too late and before we lose every cottage on Lewes Beach. Again, history matters in Lewes, and I think these are things that we really need to think about.
Thank you. Bob Heffernan?
Once again, we are faced with approving something that meets the minimums of the standards. I enthusiastically endorse Deborah's suggestions that we have a stormwater plan and standards for Lewes Beach. That I think it's an excellent idea to have historic, although this one will minimize that. I think the conditions placed tonight, such as driveways and stormwater and removing the encroachment, improve this application enough. And so I'm sort of, once again, unenthusiastically voting yes.
Tom Jensen?
I join Commissioner Heffernan in this lack of enthusiasm for the application, but feel compelled to vote in favor of it because it does meet all relevant aspects of city code. And the conditions that we've added, I believe, are a small step towards mitigating groundwater and stormwater runoff and damage. And furthermore, Mr. Chairman, I would also endorse what Deborah had suggested about a legitimate plan moving forward to deal with stormwater runoff of Lewes Beach area. And if that includes a moratorium on building while it's being hashed out, developed, or what have you, then I think it's something that's has the gravity that City Council should indeed consider that kind of a plan or suggestion moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Jonathan? You're muted, Jonathan. Jonathan, are you having connectivity problems?
I don't think you guys are still muted.
You're still muted, Jonathan?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
I'm sorry. I vote yes because it does meet the zoning code and for the reasons stated in the amendments, and I strongly agree with Deb's concern about the stormwater management needs and think a message should be made about that.
Thank you. Those other 4 points that now have had 4 commissioners at least, maybe others can go along as a recommendation, but not certainly as a condition to the approval, and they're not explaining the vote in particular. The chair is going to vote in favor of this for reasons stated during the discussions of the amendments, and seconds or echoes the points that have been made at the end by Deborah, Bob, Jonathan, and Tom about other matters that need to be addressed by mayor and city council. I would only also add that stormwater management is not just a beach issue. Water management is a citywide issue that needs greater attention. The commission has been trying to deal with some of those matters seriatim, but we all recognize that there has to be some more comprehensive plan for the city before it's too late, before we have a disaster, before we have some significant impact on our lovely way of life. I also would note that the neighbors were not opposed to the subdivision. They did not want it oriented toward Bay Avenue, but other than that, in dealing with the water issues, they were supportive of the subdivision. And I think we should always hear from the neighbors and the citizens about their views. While they're not absolutely controlling on us or mayor and city council, I think it's important to make sure that everybody gets a chance to comment and that we have public hearings and public access to information like this so that we can make the best decision possible. So with that, we have an 8-0 vote in favor of the application with those conditions, and that will be forwarded on to mayor and city council as our recommendation. Somebody was dancing, I think. If there's nothing further on that item B1, I'm going to move on now. Sorry? I'm going to move on to item B2, update and presentation regarding an ordinance to amend Article 9 of Chapter 197 zoning of the municipal code of the City of Lewes, Section 19775, relating to source water protection overlay. There was a detailed attachment to the agenda that was posted. Janelle, do you want to take us through this, please?
Yes, thank you. So I'm just going to take everybody back to the very beginning. That this ordinance was adopted in 2008 by the city as required by state code, that jurisdictions over 2,000 people have to adopt a source water protection ordinance. The focus of the ordinance is the protection of water quality and quantity, and it does have 2 main components. One is wellhead protection, and the second is excellent recharge, which is the focus of the amendment. A determination was made in 2018 that the ordinance was not fully being implemented. And the next slide shows kind of where that source water protection, that excellent recharge area is within the city. It is a portion of the beach area, and then it actually does cross the Lewes and Rehoboth Canal and catches parts of the city on the other side of Gills Neck Road. So the current code says your maximum lot coverage in the excellent recharge area is 20%. You do have the ability to increase that up to 50% if you do an environmental study. What was proposed, the Planning Commission's recommendation was a maximum lot coverage of 50% with require pervious pavement materials for driveways, sidewalks, decks, and patios. And there was also a suggestion that the commission have the city look at using permeable materials for other roads. That went to mayor and city council on May 3rd. Based on public comments, staff was tasked with revising the ordinance, and council actually adopted a moratorium that halted the enforcement of that code while staff reworked that ordinance. One of the big things is the lot coverage has been reduced for the existing lots. So the proposed ordinance actually is different. What it does is it applies to major subdivisions. So if there's a major subdivision within the excellent recharge area, it will have a maximum individual lot coverage of 20%. It would also apply to site development plans over 1 acre in size. Again, a maximum lot coverage of 20%. It would apply to small lot development, 1 acre lot, the existing lots, where your driveways, walkways, decks, sidewalks, other items of similar paved surfaces would need to be constructed out of pervious material. There's no change in the lot coverage, and again, that was based on based on public comments that we received. So again, Planning Commission had made a recommendation, what is now before mayor and council, and they have scheduled a public hearing for December 6th, is for this, that it would apply to major subdivisions for a lot coverage of 20%, site development over 1 acre for 20%, and then small lot development, existing lots. If you're gonna put in a new driveway, it needs to be pervious. If you're gonna put in a new sidewalk, it needs to be pervious, but your lot coverage doesn't change. And then I'm happy to answer any questions.
I want to add one clarification that was taken at mayor and city council. I guess two things. One, the moratorium was extended to March because they know we need time to get through the process. But the other thing was that we will, prior to the public hearing, and Charlie O'Donnell has already provided me some information for this, develop a definition for pervious surface or permeable, whatever the language was. We're developing a definition because there's some disagreement or ambiguity about what that means, so we want it to be as clear as possible.
Okay, a couple of questions, just for the record. Under the proposed amendment, where there is no change in lot coverage, what is the lot coverage in the city of Lewes if this were adopted?
It's 65%.
And the prior existing 20 to 50%, 20 to 60% will no longer be applicable?
The prior recommendation?
Oh, the prior
No,
recommendation.
prior recommendation was 50%
Right.
flat.
You said 60.
But the prior 20%, which could go to 60%,
No, so the 20% up to 50%,
Yeah.
yeah, now that would be replaced. So again, your lot coverage for your existing lot stays. You just would have to, driveways, sidewalks, et cetera, would become pervious. And then the section of code for the 20% would only apply to major subdivisions and site development plans over 1 acre. So the rest of that section of code goes away. So
That's the question I'm
yeah,
sure.
that existing, this replaces that. So the new code would read, like right now it says maximum lot coverage of 20%. the only maximum lot coverage of 20% would be for major subdivisions or site plans.
Well, heretofore, it said, if I remember correctly, and I don't have it in front of me, was 20% unless you provided the impact study, which could then increase it to
Right.
60%.
50.
It allowed you to go up to 50% if you did the study, but that is to be removed and replaced with your maximum lot coverage of 20% in a major subdivision and your maximum lot
I'm just talking about
coverage.
existing lots, I'm talking about 1 acre or less, the small development.
Yeah.
So, if I buy a small lot, and I'm not doing a major, minor subdivision, I'm not doing site plans developments over an acre, I'm just dealing with a small lot development. If I buy a small lot, and I want to reconstruct what's on that lot, what's my coverage limitation,
65%,
regardless of what's there?
regardless of what's there. And however, your driveway and your sidewalk would have to be pervious.
I'm just talking about the percentage of coverage, okay?
It's still 65%.
And that 65% is citywide or just in source water protection area?
It depends. A lot of the residential zoning districts have a lot coverage of 65%. The general commercial actually goes up to 95%. Some of the other ones are slightly, I think one of them is 60, is one, I think is the R1 is the maximum lot coverage. But that's the standard, whatever the base zoning lot coverage is what the base zoning lot coverage will be in the source water protection
Because
for
our amendment
existing
that
lots.
we recommended was a flat 50% citywide, which we thought was important to have consistency across the city.
It was 50, if it was 50% within the excellent recharge areas citywide.
No,
Yes.
no, I believe that's not correct. I believe we went beyond the excellent recharge area to say we thought there should be one standard across the city and one limit, which we said at 50% rather than any sliding scale, whether it was 20, 60, 50, whatever.
That's not the ordinance that went forward. It was specifically as it
There was-
related to excellent recharge
There was
area.
discussion about looking holistically citywide, but the ordinance was limited to the excellent recharge. But there was discussion about the need by the commission to look at reducing the lot coverage citywide, but the recommendation was for the excellent recharge area. And again, that recommendation has been, a public hearing has been held from mayor and council on that. Mayor and council instituted a moratorium, has extended the moratorium, and has asked staff to go back and make an additional change. So again, this is to provide that update to the planning commission as you've held your public hearing, you've made your recommendation. We're providing you the update that based on public comment that we had heard and just some direction that this is the new revised proposed ordinance for dealing with properties within the excellent recharge area.
Okay, I'm just demur on that. I think, having not seen what was sent up as the write-up of what we recommended, I made the specific point at the time that we should have one standard across the city beyond the excellent recharge area, and I thought that's what we voted on. But
Well, that was beyond the scope of the ordinance, so that would have had to be a separate ordinance. Because the ordinance that was provided to you that you amended dealt specifically with the source water protection overlay.
it still was a recommendation from this body, so maybe it should have been handled separately, but it
Well,
wasn't.
that would be a whole series of changes to the dimensional table, which would be a separate ordinance entirely. We wouldn't deal with that through the source water overlay zone.
You're gonna deal with the dimensional tables now through the source water, correct?
No. The source water, what the proposed amendment does is it says
No, it stays the same.
the 20% does not apply to existing lots, except for site plans that are over an acre.
In majors, yeah.
Right, in major subdivisions. And major subdivisions, that doesn't mean 20% on individual lots. That's 20% on the gross scale where you can more easily plan that.
So how many properties would be impacted?
Well, there's a large property off of Gills Neck Road with excellent recharge area. That's
That's the big
That's the
one.
main area. There are some areas, just on the outskirts of town that are in the wellhead protection area.
But this doesn't
But this
apply
doesn't
to
affect any of those requirements.
So this would affect what is euphemistically referred to as Schofeld 4?
Yes.
Does this affect the area, have to look at that map again, the area off of Fourth Street that hasn't been
The
developed?
4th Street Forest?
No,
Okay,
no,
that's not in there.
It's not in the excellent recharge area.
correct. The primary location of the excellent recharge area is between the ocean, and then it comes, I think, from around Kentucky Avenue, it kind of comes down, goes towards Cape Henlopen, and then it crosses Savannah and then gets Gills Neck
But the map doesn't
Road.
go all the way to the left there, so we can't.
Yeah, but,
Great.
the,
It was
It's a-
zoomed in on the area of town that has it.
yes.
We can see this though on the website, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, any further questions?
Yes, I-
For, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Are there any commercial sites within the special recharge area?
Yes.
On Lewes Beach, there are, not on the Gills Neck Road stuff is all residential.
But on the Lewes Beach
But,
side, there
I mean,
are
that
a few.
entire Savannah Road corridor that is,
Savannah to, Cape Henlopen.
right.
And then goes down Cedar, that commercial area is in the excellent recharge
And
area.
those would continue to be 90% if they're, are there commercial
Yes.
areas that have not been developed?
yes,
Yes,
And that would continue to be 90%?
yes.
95.
95.
Yes.
Yeah.
unless it's over an acre, and if it develops, then it would have to comply with the proposed lot coverage. If something redevelops, it would have to, and it goes through the site plan process, then it would have to comply with the proposed ordinance.
And for existing residential lots, I'm thinking specifically in the historic area where the sidewalks are impervious and the boundary line between someone's property and that sidewalk, because the homeowners paid for those sidewalks to be put in, many paid for them to extend a little bit up into their property. So if you were to redo your sidewalk, you would have a different type of sidewalk going out and connecting to the sidewalk that's on the street?
Looking at the map, with the exception of Savannah Road, I don't think that there are sidewalks in the areas that are within the excellent recharge area.
Wait, you've got all of the downtown there.
No, it's the blue hatched area.
It's the blue hatched on
sorry.
between
Okay,
the
yeah,
canal
yeah,
and the,
okay.
and
I'm
the
sorry.
bay.
Okay.
So it's the
Okay.
blue hatched area between the canal and the bay that's actually
So
in the
only
excellent recharge area.
And we don't have sidewalks in the beachside historic area.
No,
So,
the
that's what I
only,
can think of.
the
Yeah,
only
okay, good, got it.
sidewalk over there is on Savannah
Okay.
Road.
And anglers.
And anglers.
Oh, you're right.
Right.
And
In
that's not
Anglers, in Anglers Nest
Yeah.
and, a little stretch at the corner of Anglers and,
You know, by the
Market.
Blue Motel. et
right,
cetera.
you're right.
But the Marine Commercial District has, you know, some potential for further development as
It
well.
absolutely does.
So,
Yeah, some of that's not, some of the marine commercial, right adjacent to the canal is not actually in the
Right.
excellent recharge
Doesn't come
area.
up to the
There's,
canal, yeah.
it's a wonky kind of
Yeah.
looking kind of designation and area based on science.
I just wanted to bring up something following up on what Drew said. This was before I was appointed to the planning commission, but it was, looking at old documents here, I found one that was the Source Water Protection Ordinance 4121, the LPC recommendations. And in section E of that, which would be page 2, impervious cover, it says, the excellent groundwater recharge potential area shall have a maximum lot coverage of 50% total lot.
Right. And that's what went to public hearing. And there was a lot of pushback from the public. And at that point, it
From
kind of,
developers or from the public?
from the public,
Public.
from just about anybody who owns a lot in that area. And it was very clear that that was in the direction we got from council, and that's why we put that's why they put the moratorium in place, was that draft was not going to be palatable.
And kind of what are we being tasked with tonight then? Are we,
She's just updating us on the
Just
status
per-
of
Voting on
the
everything.
process.
okay.
Yep, just.
But
give me
there's
an
a new,
update.
the new draft is in your packet tonight.
Right, and I
that
read
would
all of that.
Right.
Yeah, just wanted to make you guys aware of where we are in the status, because you guys made a recommendation, it went to public hearing, it took a large diversion, and now we are back, to going before council, so we wanted to make sure you guys were given an update as to where things were with the process.
I think it's commendable that this is an update on unfinished business and just keeping us posted, so we had a chance to discuss it.
Right.
And I recognize the political pushback and the HOA that was formed and et cetera that resoundingly opposed the 50%. A lot of smoke and mirrors in that, but I understand the pressures on the council to do so, to make some adjustments, but I do think this still requires us to do more work than we're doing on the water issues, but it is what it is. It's going forward, and probably in January before you can take it up, correct? You won't vote until January because you have the hearing in December.
It'll be January or February,
Probably,
probably. I mean, that's why they extended the moratorium till
Well,
March.
you've got to get your work done though after that, before you know.
Right, well, the other thing is that, we need to submit it to DENREC.
Right.
And see where they are. Now, when I was in Dover, my staff and I wrote the, source water protection ordinance that Dover has in place. And Dover also did not apply it to already platted individual lots. I think other places have done similarly. It's tougher when you have a 5,000 square foot lot to say 20%, you know, while 20% may be the benchmark, it's a lot easier to do on something new than on a small lot.
I think we've lost the other commissioners because of that. Can we see if they have any comments or questions, please, before we
Yeah.
move on?
They're here in spirit.
Tom, Bob, or Jonathan, do you have any comments or questions on this subject we're discussing?
No, Drew, it's in the packet, so I've been flipping through the packet here, and it was online, thank you.
Bob?
I have a question, which is basically, would they consider limiting current, to current footprint, for existing lots? Because, you know, you need to cover it. The other thing I would say is, it has some advantage as I look at the excellent recharge area. If a certain citizen is ever successful in getting the sewage treatment plant moved, he'd probably like to develop that at great speed, and this would prevent him from doing that.
So, I mean, there's a few problems with existing footprint. One, there are a lot of places where the existing footprint wouldn't allow somebody to, say, install a driveway, and they don't have off-street parking. So that could be a challenge. The other thing is, there are some lots that don't have anything on them. So if you go with existing footprint, you're pretty much saying you can't build anything. I mean, 20%, the 20% that was in the code would allow existing footprint. It just wouldn't allow expansion. And again, even with the 50%, the public pushback was tremendous.
Just a comment to Bob's comment about the sewage treatment plant. If that ever moves, it'll bring a whole new meaning to the words brownfield development.
I have developed as a brownfielder too.
Mr. Panetta, would you like to comment on that?
No, I think,
Smart man, smart man.
it's best for me to stay quiet.
Tom Jensen, any comments or questions other than Brownfield?
Nope.
Jonathan, do you have
All
any
good.
comments or questions? You're muted again.
No comment.
All right, thank you. Any further? Can we move on the agenda? All right, hearing none, I'm going to move on to new business, which is a little bit complicated, to say the least. And Anne Marie, I don't know what we're going to do, but let me go through this and try and get this on the agenda and we can talk about it. An interim agenda item report was submitted to the Planning Commission, identified with attachments to the agenda. This encompasses a number of amendments to Chapter 197 zoning relating to building height, removal of references that are no longer applicable, clarification of parking space dimensions, number of permitted driveways, loading space waiverability, and inserting the city planner in certain provisions of the code. Unfortunately, I don't know how many members of the Planning Commission were aware, I know that several weren't. A justification or explanation of the changes was made available after 4 o'clock today. And I don't know how many members ever saw it.
Well, so that was sent after 4 o'clock today because it was developed this afternoon after I sat down with Councilperson Jones, who asked to break it down. We do have a PowerPoint. We can go through the PowerPoint. I could put that document on the screen. However you guys want to go through it, it is fine.
Okay. Let me just clarify one thing. I asked for a point-by-point breakdown of the changes when this was previously discussed at our pre-conference.
Right.
We didn't get
And
that.
that's in the PowerPoint.
I know it is now, but the commission hasn't had a chance to
No,
look
the
at it.
PowerPoint was provided Friday.
The PowerPoint provides this. It doesn't provide the explanation, justification.
So the PowerPoint does.
Not really.
Well, so what the feedback that I got from Councilperson Jones was that she wanted it broken down further. She and Ellen Lorraine and I worked on an outline, but the PowerPoint was intended to meet the purpose of what you intended. Councilperson Jones still had questions and asked me to distill it further, so that's what I did today. So.
When we had our pre-meeting conference call, I followed up with Janelle, I asked specifically for page-by-page breakdown of these, not be lumped together, so we could deal with them separately.
Okay,
And
I'm sorry.
I would demur with you on the point when you characterize this as code corrections. There's substantive changes in here that are not code corrections that I think we need to discuss.
No, there are administrative changes and code corrections.
I think there are substantive issues in here.
And that's fine, but again, I think that we thought that the PowerPoint was providing what we talked about at that meeting. I'm sorry if it didn't fill that need.
Well, I have a question for the commission. Are we going to be prepared to proceed on this tonight at 8:30 with her explaining the second document that was distributed, or do we need more time?
Well, so at this point, this is scheduled for public hearing.
Next week on the 26th.
Right,
yes.
so.
Which also makes our effort a little
So
bit.
it will be up to mayor and council if they want to defer to wait on the planning commission's input after the public hearing, but.
Well, let me just say, as a matter of practice, you know how I feel about public input. Number one, ordinarily, I would expect the planning commission to have had a public hearing on these matters as a way of gauging public interest or concern about this before it was referred to mayor and city council. This started at mayor and city council, didn't come to the planning commission.
Correct.
Until a member of council at the last minute suggested maybe we should get the planning commission's input. And again, at the last minute now, we're getting further information for us to consider to send something to a public hearing next week, which is already scheduled, and mayor and city council are moving ahead. I'm saying
Okay.
we're behind the 8 ball because it didn't follow what I would consider the appropriate sequence, and we're getting information belatedly and asking the commission to consider, I don't know how many amendments are in here, even if you want to go through your PowerPoint, without having a chance to digest a lot of this. Certainly, Historic Preservation Commission, the Commercial Architectural Review Commission, H-Park changes are what you said. They are amendments to update the code based on subsequent changes.
Right.
But there are some other substantive changes in here that I think may require more consideration.
And that's fine. So we have a couple of choices. We can go through the PowerPoint, or I could go through the handout that I sent out this afternoon, or we could defer it entirely. It's up to you. Again, I was responding, in developing that, I was responding to a discussion, a meeting I had with a member of council who we sat down and talked about how she wanted it to be broken out so that she could better understand it. That was this afternoon, and I turned around and
Well, I
did
appreciate
that.
you doing it. I wish it had been done earlier when I
Well,
asked for it.
So I apologize, again.
Let me ask the commissioners what they want to do so we can figure out, can we put them back up so we can see what they want to do? The chair suggests if we're going forward tonight, we should not rely upon the PowerPoint that was attached to the documentation. We've seen that, but rather we should pull up, if you can, what you produced today. But whoops, they didn't come up.
Well, they didn't because I had a mouse.
My question for the commissioners are, do we want to proceed tonight to consider this matter, recognizing that there's a mayor and city council now scheduled public hearing next week on the 26th, and there may be some matters in here that will be of necessity addressed by mayor and city council before we can even consider it. So we have a choice. Deborah, do you want to consider tonight or not?
Of course I have a question.
I wouldn't be disappointed if you didn't.
I do live across the street from Tim Ritzer, which is ironic.
Tim? Yeah,
It's in the water.
It must be the same.
Okay, now I get it.
It's not, we actually live in a flood zone now. We bought when we did. If we proceed this evening and we have comments, suggested amendments to what has been proposed, will they become part of the formal record prior to the public hearing? What weight does our
recommendations
suggestions
always go to mayor and city council. They will be on the public record at some point, but from my perspective, it's not important that they're necessarily the subject of the public hearing, but that they're before mayor and city council before they make a decision. The obligation we have is to send our recommendations to mayor and city council. They typically would publish our comments or recommendations. Whether that happens before the public hearing, that's up to staff and mayor and city council.
If you make recommendations this evening, they will be published before the public hearing.
If we make recommendations after the public hearing, mayor and city council will still have time to vote on those, or still have time to consider them.
We won't meet for another month, and they'll meet before us.
Unless you were to have a special meeting. So the public hearing, I'm thinking, the public hearing is the 26th. That's next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Then the next mayor and city council meeting is
November
November 8th, which is 2 weeks after that. So if
It really is an opportunity unless we have a special meeting.
right.
We do it tonight or we have a special meeting.
Or you request that mayor and city council defer it until December. I mean,
Or if they defer it, right?
Yes, that's an option. All right, let's just make sure, any more questions?
No,
Tim, does she have any more questions?
No, I think I would be inclined to have a special meeting or defer it, because there is a lot of content here. Unless you want to take on the Herculean task of leading us through it, Joe.
Joe?
I prefer to defer it and sit through mayor and city council next week and see what's going on, and get home and print this out so I can hold on to it, see it in person.
Melanie?
I would defer, yes, I would prefer to defer.
Nancy?
Defer.
We have a new song going, we prefer to defer, all right. Bob Heffernan?
I would prefer to defer also. I mean, when this first came out and I looked at it, I ended up with 2 screens open. This is what it's trying to say, let me refer to 197 whatever. And I was confused. And I have a page of notes, or a couple pages of notes on that. but it was not clear. It won't be clear tonight.
Tom Jensen?
I vote to defer as well. I don't think we can make a prudent decision based on where we are right now.
Jonathan?
Having been involved with this for only a few hours, I definitely vote to defer.
You have no excuse. What are you talking about? Tom Panetta, do you have any insights that you wish to share?
I would agree. Deferring seems to be the more prudent option.
So my question would be, do you want to go through it? Do you want to go through either the handout or the PowerPoint so that you can listen to the presentation and then also have that to digest, or do you just want to flat defer it?
Well, I want to do one more thing first. For those who voted for deferral, I guess that's everybody. Do you want to have a special meeting, or is the deferral include recommending that Mayor and City Council not take it up until December? Special meeting or December?
December.
Is there any urgency to these that putting it off to December would cause
It
a
depends
hardship or
on
a
who you
problem?
ask.
Okay.
Well, we're asking you.
Well, on my part, having a clear and transparent process is the better option, but
Will your PowerPoint you have tonight be the same one presented to the general public next week? Or are you going to be updating it?
well, I mean, I guess we'll look at it and look at it in comparison to the handout we worked on today and maybe make some tweaks.
I think the handout today is much more illuminating and more easily discerned as to what the synopsis of the changes are. There is some justification there, although I do have questions, but I would argue.
Spare copies of
I would
this
argue
handout?
that this is it.
I don't have
You've
it.
got it, it was emailed to you today at
I've
4
got it
o'clock.
right here.
Mine was,
4:30.
Do you want to look
You're
at it?
supposed to be on your email 24/7, come on.
no!
You've got to be a little more
All right.
talk addicted, John.
Again, I want to go back. Are we wanting to, Nancy's question is pertinent, are we wanting to ask the mayor and city council to defer until the 8th of, whatever it is, of December? Whatever you
It's
say?
the 13th, I think, of
Whatever,
December.
13th of December, and we take it up at our next regular monthly meeting? Or do we want to have a special meeting?
Defer.
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 Bob Heffernan?
Defer.
Tom Jensen?
Defer as well.
Jonathan?
No,
Oh.
he was still lighted, I thought he was
Oh.
trying to say something. All right, Jonathan?
Defer.
All right, I'm going to ask our ex officio member and our council member there, do you have a problem if we ask you to defer until December?
Not at all.
All right. So, last question for everybody. You get to vote easily here tonight on these matters. We'll get them done in 15 minutes. Would you like Anne Marie to make a presentation based on her subsequent analysis of the recommended code changes, which we can then try and digest over the next few weeks before we have our November meeting? Or would you rather wait until you've had a chance to look at it? Would you like to wait, spend a few minutes, probably take a half hour to go through these, yes? This group asks questions, Anne Marie. You can't possibly expect that they
So
won't.
I'm thinking it could be 5 to 10 minutes to go through the ordinance, and then if you have another 10 minutes for questions, I don't think it's a half hour.
I say yes. I like to see it.
Is there anybody who would prefer not to do that at this time? Anne Marie, go.
Okay, so do you want the handout, or do
Yeah,
you
the
want
new
the?
one.
Okay.
Getting your
Do we
steps
have
in.
for those of us who did not see this and print it out before coming here, are there copies of this new one?
I don't have copies, I have
Or
mine.
should-
It just
okay.
was,
I have-
it's on your email,
We'll see it,
unfortunately.
okay.
And we can bring it up because we do have, it is on the website.
And I would suggest, between now and our next meeting, if you have additional questions that you want resolved, address them to Anne Marie and see if we can get information before then. She has nothing else to do but answer our questions, so,
And I would like to ask a procedural question.
yes, go ahead.
As members of the Lewes Planning Commission, what is our role at a public hearing? Are we allowed to, obviously we're allowed to attend, are we allowed to comment?
Well, Glenn will answer
Or
that
question.
part. If it's a matter that's gonna come before the planning commission, You should not be voicing an opinion, pro or con, because that will require you to recuse yourself when it comes before the planning commission.
Okay,
This is a
gotcha.
little bit different, though, because it's code amendments, so I don't know quite how we'd handle that.
So code amendments are different in that they're legislative in nature versus the consideration.
Administrative.
Right, versus the consideration you did on the subdivision earlier today, which was a different capacity. So you have a little bit more discretion to move around and act in different places. Now, I will say that my preference is that you would not comment at city council and that you would allow this body's comments to go there, because city council may eventually say, you know what, we still need the planning commission to do a little bit more work on this, send it back to you, and things that you said there might then affect something you can or cannot do here. Again, you have more discretion in a legislative matter, so I don't get as concerned if you would testify at city council in this sort of a capacity, but I kind of like it better if you avoid it. Certainly, if you do it, you should represent to city council that you're there in your individual capacity, not carrying the planning commission's message.
But can I
And-
also,
And
what
just to
about
clarify,
questions?
not commenting means also not asking questions, because often a question implies a
Right.
given position.
Right.
but can I also say, immodestly perhaps, members of the commission have more impactful comments that are rendered in a decision or recommendation from from the planning commission to the city council than testifying in a public hearing or offering questions at the public hearing. So again, I would urge you, if you have questions about it, send them to Anne Marie between now and our next meeting. If you want to testify for whatever reason, certainly just make it known that you're testifying as an individual, has no standing here, with the potential consequence that we may ask you to recuse yourself if something comes back to us.
And to be clear, I totally understood that in other matters. This was just a little bit different, as it was a legislative question.
Right.
That's why I wanted to clarify.
Good question.
Okay, Anne Marie, please.
Okay, so to start, so we kind of broke it down into the different components. So Article 2 of 197, administrative responsibilities. The first two things are eliminating the references to HPC and CARC, because that should have been done when the ordinance was developed to replace them with HPARC. So that somehow was missed at that point in time. 197.22, the ordinance would propose that the city planner, rather than the building official, would be responsible for the administration and interpretation of the zoning ordinance.
Excuse me, can I ask a question? For
Yeah.
those of us who are not in the room, is there a way to put up a screen?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't
Share it.
I didn't do this.
Now can you
Thank
see
you.
it?
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I had it up on this screen and didn't notice. So the 197.22 would have the city planner, rather than the building official, be responsible for the administration and interpretation of the zoning ordinance. This is consistent with the practice of local governments that employ professional planning staff. The building official is typically the zoning administrator in smaller municipalities that do not have any planning staff. So that was something that I think Tom and I even talked about at some point, making that change. Article 5, this is the tricky one, and this one honestly was, when we looked at it, it was truly an error in the code. However, because there was an error in the code, this provision was not enforced for the last 10 years. So from a practical standpoint, it's a new requirement. So, you know, in our brain, we were thinking, oh, it's a correction. From a practical matter, it's a substantive change. So this would modify what elements of a building permit are to exceed the building height. And that one is not a piece that was in code, but it would just kind of update it based on the changes in technology. One of the things that is in there now is an elevator can exceed building height. that's anticipating, things like hospitals, places. And it used to be that elevators had large mechanical things associated with them, and that was the need. It doesn't function that way anymore. So that was one of the reasons that came out. We added some things. I don't have the ordinance in front of me. I have the
We added cupolas, telecommunication towers, and public utilities because those weren't actually in code. So
and
we
they
took-
typically do exceed the building height.
Correct.
Then it would also address how rooftop decks would be viewed in relation to building height. We've had a number of instances where a building is built to the 34-foot building height or close to it, and then the railing system or a wall around the deck exceeds it. So that was seen as something that, again, I think when this was written, the code didn't anticipate the pervasiveness of rooftop decks. And then this is the thing that was an error, but ends up being substantive because it hadn't been enforced. Prior to 2011,
Can we
oh,
scroll down? Sorry.
can I have you go and, oh, I'm sorry, scroll down, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I do need you to go back because the
Yeah.
Bluetooth
Yeah.
isn't, I'm out of range. So prior to in 2011, and I think some of you were on the planning commission then, you were, Drew, right? You weren't? Joe was. Okay. There was a total redo of the zoning ordinance. You'll remember this, Joe, because you had the University of Delaware's consultant come in and work with you, and yeah, see, I see your face, and it might have been a little painful, but regardless, I mean, and a total overhaul of a zoning ordinance is very painful, so you tend not to do it very often, but we did it in 2011, and prior to that code, in what was called the Lewes Beach District, you had to have a roof pitch of 512. And when it was recodified, or when the 2011 updates went into effect, the reference in the code says R2H, R2 and R2H, formerly Lewes Beach District, instead of R3, R3H. So the intent, I mean, there's no doubt that the intent at the time was to require the roof pitch. Due to a typo, it didn't happen. And I went back to the ordinance that was passed at that time, and the typo's in the ordinance. It wasn't a typo in codification. So because it was wrong, we weren't enforcing it. And so we looked at it and said, oh, well, it's a typo, fixing it. But because we haven't been enforcing it, it truly is new. And that was, thinking in bureaucrat mode, honestly, on our part when we called that a correction. Because technically it's a correction, but it does have effects. My suggestion, because this roof pitch issue has really upset a lot of people, is that the roof pitch issue be extracted into a separate ordinance, because it's, it needs its own kind of traction. So then the next thing was, there was some murkiness on the minimum required size of an off-street parking space. So that's 19761. But then the other thing is, there's nothing in the code that says that you can only have one driveway. So we've done all of these things to say, your driveway access can't be more than 20 feet or 12 feet in the R4, R4H zones. And then people say, well, that house has two driveway accesses. That's not what, well, the code doesn't prohibit it. I think that the sense that we've gotten from elected officials is that the 20 feet should be 20 feet per house, not 20 feet as many driveways as one lot wants. And then when we were going through, this is another thing that was a correction. There are areas where site plan review, as it relates to parking, references the planning commission. And as you'll recall, when the site plan, well, and Joe knows this one well too, when the site plan review committee was developed to review site plans, that's no longer the planning commission. So that, again, is truly a correction. So that's the same as with 19762.
Just a footnote here, with H Park, they don't like site plans, they like elevations, they like details.
Right,
We'll be at a
but
site
the
plan.
architectural elevation is part of the site plan, which is why there was a sense that H Park needed to be part of that review process.
Yeah, H Park can try, but
So, well, that would be a discussion for another day.
Yeah,
Let's
that's
not,
where they're at with it.
let's not complicate this one more
I
than.
know.
And then 19791, administrative review, appeal of administrative decisions and determinations. That would clarify that an appeal could be made from a planner's determination as well as the building official's determination. What we did is we, and that's in other sections further down, there are some responsibilities that when we hired a planner, the planner does, like conditional uses, which is the next one. But then there are other things that have stayed with the building official, like the historic district responsibilities. So the idea is that there could be a determination made by either the planner or the building official that could get appealed to the Board of Adjustment. And then 19795, this again would have it be that the conditional use applications go to the planner, not the building official, because the planner does the review of applications that go to the planning commission. And then 197 and 101, again, this is transferring that role from the building official to the planner. And then the final thing in 167, 16, which is not in the zoning ordinance, that would also just clarify what the zoning stuff in the zoning, or the parking stuff in the zoning ordinance would say, which is that you're only permitted to have one curb cut or access to a public street. The reason that we're calling it driveway access, the zoning ordinance refers to your curb cuts. Interestingly, in places where we don't have curbs, they're not technically curb cuts, so we don't want to get into an argument in semantics about, well, there's no curb cuts, so we, in the section that governs streets, address access to streets. So whether or not you have a curb cut, you can't have more, this would say you can't have more than one per residential property, and it needs to be no wider than 20 feet.
Corner lots in Piletown Village, the people who have corner lots like to have a driveway come in and driveway come out. They have that availability because they have two street addresses.
And they don't have reverse on their cars, so they don't
And-
drive forward.
And for those that already have it, they'd be able to keep it.
I hope so.
If this were to be approved, we wouldn't allow it on future. And that has been an issue that has come up in a number of locations throughout town. Why was this allowed? And the answer is, it's not prohibited, so.
Well, just as an aside, 19755 building height was, for a long time, very unevenly adhered to or administered. We had an elevator shaft on the redo of our home in '07, and we were told to take it down after we had the thing installed and move it, even though the house is 42 feet tall, 126 years old. And they told us to move the elevator because it exceeded the 34 feet on a 42-foot tall house.
Oh, wow.
At several $1,000s of cost. And we appealed to the Board of Adjustment, and they said,
Okay, so that's, and that's some of the things, you know, in terms of transferring some of the responsibilities to the city planner, relate to the training of a planner is very different from the training of a building official, where the building officials, I mean, they're going out and they're checking your footers, they're checking to make sure things are framed properly, and that's really a different skill set. And in small towns, the building official does it all because there's nobody else to do it. But typically, once you have planning staff, you know, those zoning administrative judgment call things end up being allocated to that person.
Okay, let's keep to our 20 minutes, which
Oh,
I believe
sorry.
exceeded. That's all right. I want to get through the rest of the agenda if we can. It's getting close to the bewitching hour, and it's close to Halloween, so I want to see what we turn into at,
And it's a full minute.
late hour. All right, can we move on to reports? Thank you, Anne Marie, for that. Again, if you have questions about this, send them to Anne Marie. If you have really tough questions, send them to Glenn. No.
And I'll pass it right back to Drew.
Let's go on to the Annexation Code Subcommittee. Melanie?
Yes, we met this week, and we're certainly at a point now where we've got a lot of ideas percolating, and we want to take them to the city council to make sure that these things are within the scope of what they wanted us to look at.
So you want to go, you want to recommend, you want to bring it forward to the planning commission to give a recommendation, Mayor and City Council, to test the scope of what you're considering?
It was recommended that we go directly to the city council.
Just with the ideas that they've been looking at to make sure that before they invest a great deal more time and the commission invests a great deal of time, that they go back to council and make sure, hey, are we all still on the same board? If so, keep moving forward.
Glenn, under what framework would we do that?
Yeah, because they're a subcommittee of the planning commission, so really the more appropriate is somehow it needs to flow through here. I guess tonight, to the extent nobody here expresses objection to them going directly, I suppose that the chair of that committee could provide a report through Janelle to the city council. It is a little bit unconventional, you're right.
Well, I would like the subcommittee chair to make the report to the city council. I mean, she can certainly provide something to Janelle, which will be part of the agenda, but I think in this instance, if we're going to, unless a commissioner objects and wishes to volunteer, I would recommend that, I would agree that the subcommittee chair, AKA Melanie, who stepped forward to fill a void for us, be the person to go forward and make the report to Mayor and City Council on the question of the review, the scope and review of the issues before the annexation subcommittee.
Fine.
Yes.
Is that-
Yeah.
is there
Actually, what
is-
we discussed, so yeah.
Yeah, and that's what was discussed in the subcommittee.
Is there objection
Yeah.
to that by any commissioner? Hearing none, you have a date. All right, get on the agenda. I appreciate you doing that. Nancy, subdivision code.
We're working to a fairly aggressive schedule at this point. We have tentatively planned a November 23rd public meeting and plan to have a draft of the revisions to the subcommittee, revisions to the subdivision code ready for then, and a PowerPoint presentation that could be used in a presentation to the public to get feedback. We then plan to, after that meeting, consolidate the feedback we've gotten and bring it back to the Planning Commission.
Was the 23rd selected because it was an open date on the city calendar?
Yes,
Because that's 2 days before Thanksgiving.
I know.
And I don't know what the
Yeah.
consequence of that might be in terms of participation. But I assume, Anne Marie, that could be by Zoom as well?
Absolutely.
All right, so thank you for picking that up.
Yes.
I want to say,
And, sorry,
go ahead.
one other comment is, as we've been going through this, we're finding that there are some areas that will be making recommendations around that, in a sense, will have applicability in other areas of the code, and we'll be pulling those out. We're also forming a little bit of a parking list of items, which, while we are looking exclusively at 170, There are areas that I think, as we make revisions there, again, other areas of the code that that we might want Planning Commission at some point to look at to make this more
Well,
consistent.
thank you for that. We appreciate that. That's very helpful. I just want to tell the other commissioners and the other chairs that you have quite a competition with Nancy. She doesn't even walk down her street without giving me a report on the fly of a subcommittee meeting while I'm on my way to another meeting. She doesn't quit. She's on it all the time. So, Khalil, would you update us a little bit on the Resiliency Executive Committee, please?
Yeah, we met, I think we're meeting again next week.
Yes.
We met 2 weeks ago. We've had a number of different speakers come in, and as I've mentioned before, it's really become more of a crash course in climate change and resiliency for a lot of us. And Janelle presented at our last meeting as well. So I think that is the plan going forward. I think we're starting to engage more in discussion, and I think where we're heading is a lot more conversation and debate back and forth as opposed to presentations every week, because I think everyone's feeling a little bit more comfortable with the issue. And we have a terrific group from the University of Delaware and DENREC who are moderating and facilitating the discussion, which I think has been very, very useful.
And I would just add, with your permission, Khalil, that Janelle's presentation was about the city code, what it covers, what it doesn't cover, broadly stated, which was really trying to bring us together to talk about what do we do in Lewes, what are the issues in Lewes, and that you're going to distribute your PowerPoint to the commission?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd ask you to do that because I think it's helpful to give them the same framework that Resiliency is working on. All right, I'm going to move along. Thank you, Khalil. Glenn, City Solicitor report.
The only thing I'll mention, Mr. Chair, is that City Council did approve a couple things that are planning related, that being Lewes Brewing Company site plan was approved, Fancy Pants Holdings site plan was also approved. Two site plans that go together like two peas in a pod. There is a Board of Adjustment hearing on November 2nd that relates to H Park's jurisdiction over the Cultural Historic District and has some ancillary relationship to the net wheel. That's all I have. When I say ancillary, I mean...
That's a legal term, meaning he doesn't want to deal with it.
Right. Thank you.
I will point out that a recommendation was made that the first IPA from Lewes Brewing Company be called Fancy Pants.
Yes. Yes.
Holy.
Actually, I would like to say that they could get into technical issues because their DBC already has swishy pants. Which we have been known for.
Little trademark.
That actually came up, by the way.
There we go, we know our local
Yeah.
peers.
Well, I'm sure everyone saw the headlines in the paper. If not, may have witnessed the meeting. By 3-1, the recommendation regarding Fisher's Cove was upheld by the Mayor and City Council to deny preliminary consent. And if you haven't listened to it, you should listen to the recording. There were some very interesting comments made about how people voted, I think much more effectively if you listen to it than what was reported in the paper. They really didn't do a good job of giving coverage to what was reported. And I think it's important that we understand sort of where the Mayor and City Council are coming from. And I encourage our ex officio member from the City Council and other City Council people here to come forward with their own ideas as they have expressed in their vote, because it would be helpful to us to hear some of this stuff and to consider it going forward. It will not inhibit your vote because you're not saying which way you're going to vote, but you have ideas about things and issues before us, and we should consider some of those. I thought there were some interesting ideas expressed by council members that might be helpful to us in the future, for what it's worth. Janelle?
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Liaison?
No comments.
They don't want to look at anything.
No, I want to keep my distance from them right now.
Anne Marie, anything else you wanted to add?
I would add, Glenn mentioned the ordinances. The other ordinance that doesn't directly come under this, but it certainly relates to the work you all do, is that they did approve the requirement for fire suppression systems in new residential construction. So our building officials Robin's been in contact with the state fire marshal's office, who, as we get started up, will do the suppression system plan reviews, and they will also train our staff to do that, and our staff will go along with them to the inspections, and then ultimately they'll need to get the NFPA training.
Certification.
But, you know, we're gearing up to go on that.
The chair would like to make a request if, at some point in your spare time, Anne Marie, it's a request for staff support, so I'm going to direct it to you. I would like to have staff come back to us at our next meeting with the open items that the Planning Commission has forwarded to Mayor and City Council, or projects that have gone to Mayor and City Council after approval that have not been completed. I can think of a couple of major developments that we've approved that are still laying fallow, and I'd like to get an update on what the status of those is and what the status of any other open matters may be with Mayor and City Council or beyond with building officials, zoning, whatever. So it would be helpful if we could see that next month, perhaps.
We can do that. What I would say is if there's anything specific, if you just want to shoot me an email, that way I make sure that we
Okay.
Address it.
I don't have a comprehensive list in my head, but I've got a couple, and I'll get back to you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to work on something and then realize that there was something that
No, I appreciate that.
should have been on the list and wasn't.
Any other comments from any other commissioner before we go to the minutes? All right, I'm going to call up the special meeting of the Lewes Planning Commission on September 1st, which was dedicated to Fisher's Cove. I will say, before any amendments are offered or changes, suggestions, I think Jackie did a terrific job recording and producing for Mayor and City Council and us an extensive set of minutes, which I think is the gold standard. We should have that kind of detail in these important decisions, and they should be reflected in the minutes in as much detail as possible. That being said, are there any changes, corrections, or additions to the minutes? Do I hear any?
Yes.
All right, Melanie.
I have some minor corrections. On page 2, the second paragraph from the bottom, plans do not show any of the impacts to existing improvements along Rodney Avenue, period. And then new sentence, the entire road system. That's fairly minor.
Okay.
And then the next paragraph, regulation state open space system shall consist of both active and passive uses in, and insert there open space areas. And then further down, but is silent on its location. It should be on its floodplain location. And that's it.
Okay, anybody else have any amendments or suggestions? Hearing none. As amended, say all in favor of adopting the amendments, approving the amendments as published with the amendments of Melanie, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining?
Abstaining, since I was not at the meeting. I think
Yes, I
those are-
understand.
those are
That's a
two
good, I think
recused.
that's
Okay,
a
but
good.
abstain.
All right.
Staying here also.
All right, so Deborah and Bob will abstain, so otherwise it's unanimous. The regular meeting minutes of September 15th, are there changes, corrections, or additions to that?
No.
No.
So, hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes of September 15th, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Unanimously approved. I'm sorry?
Jonathan abstained.
Jonathan abstained because you weren't here. All right?
Right.
And I'm sorry for the reason you weren't able to be here. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I
So
make a
moved.
motion.
Joe moves, Melanie gets the second.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much for your attention.
You guys, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Leo?